Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, classmates. So, here are the group 2 will be reported by the first voyage of Around the World by Antonio Pigafetta. So, in this discussion, we will travel back time and discover one Philippine history and talk about happening in the document. And it's important to understand the history of the Philippines. So, first and foremost, I will let me see you the content of the presentation. So first we have the background of the author. Second is the historical background of the document. Third is content and contextual analysis of the important historical information found in the document. And the lastly is contribution and relevance of the document in understanding the grand narrative of the Philippine history. So in the content of presentation will be discussed of my other member.
Antonio Pigafetta. Antonio Pigafetta, born in 1491 in Vicenza, Venice, Italy. Eldest son of Giovanni Pigafetta, the second wife of Angela Zoga. Studied astronomy, geography, and cartography. Worked in the ships owned by the Knights of Rhodes.
So I continue the report. So Antonio Pigafetta is well-educated young man, proposing a vivid curiosity of the world. So Antonio Pigafetta is edukado siya na pagkatao, then curious kayo siya sa kalibutan. He joined the delegates of Monsignor Francisco Crigante when he was assigned as Papal Nuncio to the Spain in 1519. In the same year, he became acquainted with the lucrative spice trades and heard the news of voyage to undertaken Ferdinand Magellan. So, si Antonio Pigafetta is itawag siya o karing acquainted sa trade sa spices. So, siya naga-trade sa mga spices o kaning sa kauban niya ang mga pari sa Espanya o dituan niya na naibawan na si Ferdinand Magellan is maglalakbay siya. So maglalayag si Ferdinand Magellan. So nangayo siya og basbasap hari na makauban pud siya ato na paglalakbay, makalayag pud siya. So gikan siya sa Barcelona, nadto siya og padulong sa Malaga o naglakbay siya sa Seville. So para ilahad ang kanyang mga liham or recommendation kay Magellan sa mga official sa Casa de la Conta, which is the office in charge of voyage to the New World.
Pigafetta was one of 18 men who made the complete trip returning to Spain in 1522 under the command of Juan Sebastian Elcano. He returned to Spain on September 6, 1522, aboard the Victoria, which is the only ship that was able to return home. After this, he presented himself to Charles V., a book written by his own hand in which we set down the things that happened from during day to day during their voyage, which is obviously now known as the first voyage around the world, which is a detailed tale of exploration and exotica of the first circumnavigation. Well, sadly, Emperor Charles was apparently not impressed and Pigafetta received no honor beyond his wages. So, on his way home to Italy, he passed by Portugal and France and shared to the people the things he knew about Magellan's expedition. Good thing, in Italy, the Pope was impressed enough to give him residence while he prepared his manuscript for publication. And then, he later joined the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem in its battle against the Turk, and died sometime in 1534. And that was the background of the author.
So now let's proceed to the historical background of the document of First Voyage Around the World. Spices were in high demand among Europeans due to their many uses, including food preservation, food improvement, and also medicine. So Portugal and Spain were locked in a fierce competition to see who could discover and claim new land in order to supply European aristocracy with the spices they craved. In search of spices, the Spaniards approved Magellan's plan to go to the east via westward direction after Portugal turned down his plan. Magellan led an expedition of 5 ships with 237 men, namely San Antonio, Santiago, Concepcion, Victoria, and Trinidad. However, only one remained and returned to Spain after the expedition, which is the Victoria.
The Treaty of Tordesillas was effective at this time. It is an agreement between Spain and Portugal to settle conflict over lands discovered or explored by Christian Columbus and late others 15th century voyagers. On June 7, 1494, Spain and Portugal agreed to fix the boundary between their respective domains along a meridian 370 leagues west of the Cape Verde Island. They established two areas in which they would have monopoly over discovery, navigation, and trades. In 1505, Magellan is service to Portugal, joined the fight, traveling to India, Malaysia, and Indonesia. But his days in service to Portugal were numbered. He was accused of illegal trading and fell out with Manuel I, who turned down his proposal to locate a new spice route. Magellan was convinced that by sailing west instead of east and going through a humored strait through South America, he could map a new route to Indonesia and India. So, Magellan abandoned his Portuguese loyalty, transferred his allegiance to Spain through King Charles V, and eventually gained his trust.
So, Antonio Pigafetta wrote the chronicle on board on one of the 5 ships during the expedition. So, ang gibuhat ni Antonio Pigafetta kay nagsulat siya og talaan about sa barko sa una sa mga 5 ka mga barko sa panahon sa ekspedisyon. The first voyage around the world. So, ang unang paglalakbay sa buong mundo. Nga gisulat ni Antonio Pigafetta sa iyang narrative o cartographic record journal or Chronicles of Magellan Expedition.
On March 16, 1521, after nearly 3 years of navigating the world oceans, Magellan and his crew arrived in the Philippines, which he named the Islands of Ladrones, means the Islands of Thieves. They first landed in the island of Zamar, and Magellan named Zamal. The arrival of Magellan and his crew in the Philippines marked the beginning of Spanish colonization. In the country during this stay, Magellan established a friendly relationship with the local tribes and converted many of them to Christianity.
Magellan named the place Island of Humunu as the archipelago of San Lazarus. Due to several islands located in that district, Magellan succeeds in his plan to influence the fate of the people on the island he has conquered. The first Mass in our country happened on March 31 and Easter Day.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, classmate. This is the continuation of our report. The native Filipino have their idols before and a god na tinatawag nilang Aba. But they threw this belief away as they embraced Christianity, which Magellan introduced. On April 7, Magellan and his crew went to Cebu. Noong narinig nila ang mga magagandang ulat patungkol sa isla. So, there was a negotiation through a notary. The king of Cebu asked for a drop of their blood as a sign of their friendship, and both of them agreed. On April 14th, Magellan spoke to the king and encouraged him to be a good Christian by burning all of the idols and worship the cross instead.
Pigafetta was left on board the ship and was not able to join the 24 men who went to the gathering because he was nursing his Padawan. So, si Pigafetta kaya nagbiling siya sa barko dahil inaalagaan niya yung sugat niya sa labanan. The natives has slain all the men except the interpreter and Juan Serrano, who shouted at the men on the ship to pay ransom so that he would be spared, but he was left on the island for they refused to go back to shore. So si Juan Serrano gitry jud niya isagitan to niyang lalaki sa barko para balikon sila kaya syempre nabiyaan. And the fleet abandoned Serrano and left Cebu to their journey around the world. So, si Serrano, gibiyahin siyang kauban, nakatungin kauban na naglakbay sila around the world. So, that's my part. Thank you for listening.
First voyage around the world. The account is a proof of richness, governance, and independence in our country in the pre-colonial era. Christianity, as the largest religion in the world, was propagated in the Philippines by Ferdinand Magellan. The faith of the natives before is just about raising hands and clapping, building different images of their idols, until Magellan introduced Christianity to them. It was accepted and practiced by Filipinos and has been a considerable part of their culture and beliefs. The account of Pigafetta enrich Philippine historiography because it contains essential details about the condition of the Visayan Islands in the 16th century. Local textbook writers use their book as their historical information and source about the beginning of Christianity in the Philippines. The document also narrated the status or inferiority of the Filipinos in welfare, manner of dressing, and system of writing. It provided a description, location, and distances of the places visited, therefore enhancing cartography knowledge at that time. He proved to other explorers that the people today that circumnavigating the world was possible. They discovered a large body of water in the side of American continent, which named the Pacific Ocean.
So the conclusion and the main theme of Pigafetta's document, The First Voyage Around the World, emphasizes the expedition of realizing the world and proving that the world is round, as well as discovering pre-colonial societies by Ferdinand Magellan. The document exposes the events from their journey across the Pacific and their arrival at the Philippines, and it also introduces the native way of life of our ancestors before the colonization of the Spaniards. This document is an instrument that proves Magellan's theory as it gives accurate and geographical account of the circumnavigation.